So we have a long history of fighting, especially with the Spanish. And then when the French and the English came along, I don't know really if we really met the English, but the French for sure we had contact with. There's people in our tribe have French names, Bahil, Rubidoux. I'm trying to remember some of the others. There's more, I just can't remember them right now. So there's a long period of contact in history between us and the French. And then eventually the United States comes along, and we always got along with the United States. We saw them by the time the United States came along, there was a lot of immigrant tribes that were coming out onto the plains and kind of pushing and putting pressure onto what we had always thought of as our lands. And so by the time the United States comes along, we saw them as an ally. And so never fought against them. In fact, we used them as a powerful ally against our enemies. And at the same time, the United States used us as a powerful ally against their enemies. So we're kind of famous for, in the 1860s, there were two brothers that were in the Army called Frank North and Luther North. And they had just moved out to Nebraska with their family when they were probably 12 years old or so, and must have really liked Pawnees because they became fluent in the Pawnee language. They were actually from Manhattan, New York. And so in the 1860s, when those two men were in the Army, they kind of hatched this idea of recruiting Pawnees to serve as what became called scouts, but they were actually enlisted into the United States Army. They're not like paid mercenaries or something. So for about the next 25 years, there were over maybe 150 Pawnee men that served in the United States Army and fought to protect the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, fought to protect settlers in Kansas and Nebraska against our traditional enemies, which were usually the Cheyenne and the Sioux, because there's multiple Sioux tribes. There's a whole lot of Sioux. So that's what we're really famous for, is our Pawnee Scouts. But really, they fit into a long, long tradition of warriors. So in our tribe, being a man is almost synonymous with being a warrior, protecting your family, protecting your community, taking care of them, and so forth. And like I was saying earlier, we had a long history of fighting the Spanish because they were coming up there and invading what we thought was our country. And so if you look at all of that, you can see how there's this long, long tradition. It goes right up to the Pawnee Scouts. Then when the Pawnee Scouts, the very last time that they were recruited was after we had come here to Oklahoma in 1876. Frank North came back, recruited 100 scouts, and they went back up to Montana and Wyoming to fight against the Sioux and the Cheyennes. And then their children, that very next generation, fought in the Spanish-American War. And so you can find a very famous photograph of a man named William Pollock, who's a Pawnee that fought with Roosevelt's Rough Riders at San Juan Hill. And it goes right up into World War I. We had a large contingent of Pawnees that joined the Army and went over to France and fought in the trenches. And we were fortunate in that they went all through that combat that you'll see in movies and things like that. It was very horrific. And none of them were hurt or come back hurt, wounded. None of them were killed. So it was very, very fortunate. And then in World War II, there's a huge group of men that were in the 45th Infantry and fought in Sicily and Italy. One of my good friends, my Pawnee brother, his grandfather was with the 82nd Airborne and jumped into Normandy and made all of those paratrooper landings. And it continues right up to today. Vietnam, Desert Storm, the war on terror. It's always a big deal when our Pawnee men go off and fight in the Army, any of the services, the Navy, the Marines, anything. So when they come home, they're very much honored at dances and in our ceremonies and things like that. So there's still this continuation, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that those warriors have been and always will be a very important part of our Pawnee culture, and they're kind of a central figure in that.